My family owns some cabins in Oregon that we all enjoy staying in occasionally for family gatherings. However, this trip, I was going solo. I had just turned 20 and had never camped alone before. I figured camping somewhere near the cabins would be perfect in case anything went wrong. I drove for an hour and then walked for 30 minutes down a trail that led to the cabin I would be staying in. As I approached, I noticed one of the windows was missing. There was no glass on the ground, making it seem like the entire window had simply been removed. This was an unexpected sight. I didn't originally plan on entering the cabin, but I had brought the key for emergencies, and this felt like something I should investigate. However, my confusion grew when the door opened without me unlocking it. I walked in and it was immediately obvious that the place had been broken into. Muddy footprints covered the floors, and some expensive items were missing. It was unfortunate to see, but there was no way of knowing how long ago this happened. As far as I knew, it had been months since anyone was at the cabins, and even then, they might not have come to this specific cabin. I tried my best to lock up the place and set out to find a spot to camp. I had no phone service, but I didn't feel it was absolutely necessary to let my family know right away or even call the police yet. I walked for another 30 minutes downhill from the cabin and found a flat enough spot to set up camp. Rain started pouring down, and being new to this, it took me a couple of hours to get everything set up correctly. Already soaked, I sat outside on a nearby log under a tree and started eating some pre-packaged food. Then, out of nowhere, I started hearing someone talking. I immediately spotted a man walking behind me. He was drenched, walking up the hill towards the cabin, and didn't seem to notice me. The way he was speaking was really weird because it made no sense, and he was obviously talking to himself. Soon, he walked out of sight, but seeing that sent chills down my spine. An hour passed, and I took a quick hike back up to the cabin to see if he was maybe staying there. But from afar, it still looked empty, so I went back. Once it was night, I used a fire kit to start a small campfire and used it to heat up some of my food. The rain made it difficult, but once the fire was going, it stayed lit fairly well. Not long into it, I heard footsteps coming from up the hill. I stared at the trees, seeing nothing but pitch black beyond the reach of my campfire. The footsteps continued until a man came into sight. I couldn't see much of him, but he looked similar to the man I'd seen earlier. "Hey, what do you want?" I yelled, trying to scare him off. He stopped and stared at me with a blank face, rain dripping from his head as he just stood there. I yelled again, but he didn't move. We were standing just 10 feet from each other, and every second made me more and more scared of what was about to happen. Then, through the rain, I heard the sound of a single footstep behind me. I instantly sprinted to the side of the hill and didn't stop until my legs gave out under me. I don't think they chased me, but with the rain and wind, it was too hard to hear while running. I found my way up the hill and walked the rest of the way to my car in the rain, using only my phone light. Once I got in range, I called 911. In the days following, a team was sent out to investigate the cabin and my campsite. The campsite was gone, left with only a few useless pieces of equipment. But in the cabin, they identified 3 unique shoe prints on the floor. Knowing that there were 3 unknown men out there hiding not far away left me shaking for weeks. Nothing else was found, and it was all said to most likely just be a robbery because they didn't chase me. But who knows what they would have done to me if I had stayed there. This happened during a Boy Scout campout when I was 15. My friend who was supposed to share the tent with me called out of the trip at the last minute, so that meant I had to pitch the tent and sleep in it alone. The sun was going down, and after a long day of hiking, we got back to camp to set up our tents. It was already dark at that point, and I was still trying to set it up. It wasn't as easy doing it yourself. Someone came over and finally helped me, and then we ate dinner. After the cliche telling of scary stories around the campfire, we all went to sleep. I guess I was a little happy that I had my own tent at that point since I had more room. I fell asleep quickly but woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of somebody stomping around my tent. I immediately assumed it was another scout going to take a leak or something. You might be thinking that all our tents were pitched right next to each other, but our scoutmasters actually had us pitch our tents far apart. So, I was pretty far from my closest scout mates. The stomping around the tent seemed to just be going around in a circle. So, at that point, I was sure somebody was messing with me. I asked who it was, and in response to that, they stomped off into the woods. I almost found myself going out and following them, but I figured it wasn't worth it and just tried to fall back asleep. But after that, it was hard. Sure enough, the stomping came back and started circling the tent again. I was pissed off now, so I got up and unzipped the door to the tent. I was expecting to see another scout, but when I confronted the person making the noise, instead I saw a grown man, probably 6'5" in his mid-30s. My heart was racing, and I couldn't even gather the courage to scream. The man gave me a creepy smile and then brought his finger to his lips, signaling for me to be quiet. I did a quick 180 and sprinted to my scoutmaster's tent, screaming like a baby. He ran out before I even reached the tent, and I told him about the man. I saw him, and the other scoutmaster ran over to my tent with one of the hunting rifles, but they didn't find the man. They did, however, pick up on the tracks the man left walking around the tent. We were all told to bring our tents closer together, literally right on top of each other. The trip was cut short the next day, and we all went home. I have never gone camping since, and I never will again. Number 3. So, me and a couple of my buddies went camping last summer alongside the Willamette River. We actually had a decent hike into the deep end of the woods. We did some night fishing, listened to music, and basically drank to the point where everything was funny. Later in the night, I would guess we finally called it a night somewhere past 2 a.m. I shared a tent with one of my buds while the other two shared another one. We heard them laughing about something first. We were initially amused by the sound of their laughter, but it soon got annoying, and we yelled for them to shut up. One of them responded, "It isn't us." I sat up startled at the response. I came to realize that it was the sound of only one person laughing, and it didn't sound like either one of my friends. Even in my drunken state, I realized how odd it was for someone to be out this far in the woods so late at night. The laughing gradually got closer and louder to our campout. My friend shot up and looked at me with a worried look on his face. I heard my other friends scream over to us that they were getting freaked out as the laughter left and got even closer. I could make it out very clearly to be the laugh of a male, probably in his 30s or 40s. He sounded like he was as drunk as us messing around with friends, but we only heard his laugh. Nobody else was there. There was something indescribably creepy about his laugh too, as if it was missing something to it. You had to be there to understand. The laughing was now just at the edge of our campsite, but we couldn't hear any footsteps at all. Now, that might not seem like a big deal, but it was impossible to move through that undergrowth without making noise. Finally, all of a sudden, the laughing stopped completely. We had no idea where whoever that was standing, as he hadn't made a single sound. We sat there in silence, looking at each other. My friend was clearly freaking out, but he was keeping it together the best he could. Finally, something broke the silence, the sound of something rubbing against the cottony fabric of the tent. We saw the outline of a hand through the moonlight pressing on the tent. We both screamed at the top of our lungs before scrambling out. We ran as fast as we could through the woods, our other friends following us. After about 5 minutes of running, we somehow found our car. I actually puked from running so much before taking the wheel. I don't condone drinking and driving, but in that moment, I still believe it was the only option. It was by far the most horrific experience of my life. No idea who or what the hell that was, or what they wanted. These incidents occurred in the Rocky Mountains just south of Silver Plume, Colorado, beginning on the evening of August 14th, 2018, and more strange reoccurrences would take place the following couple of nights. That day, a couple of neighbors had gone hiking along the ridgeline of Leavenworth Mountain, just south of town, and I was set to meet them up there later that afternoon. My plan was to rendezvous with them in the early evening and hang out until after the sun went down. That night was the peak of the Perseid meteor shower, and it was forecast to be especially spectacular since the moon would be a barely thin crescent and would not obscure the clear dark skies. So I set out in the following hours with a small pack and limited supplies since I was staying relatively close to home. I did have a small camelback with liter or two of water, a rock hammer and hatchet, and my new green laser that I was hoping would add another bit of good times to the night's light show. I started the hike a bit later than I'd planned. The main trails to the top consisted of a series of long and winding switchbacks, so I decided to cut some time by bushwhacking straight up the mountain to meet my friends. My plan backfired as I found myself slowed down by steeper than anticipated inclines, slippery rock tailings, and sheer cliffs. Unfortunately, the cell service is spotty at best, and I was unable to contact my friends until finally reaching the summit around sunset. After a few attempts, I finally got connected to my pals via text, and to my surprise learned that they had already hiked back down into town as it was starting to get dark. I told them no problemo, since I had planned to stay up top of the mountain until late anyway to count meteors, and maybe they could join later. They informed me they were pretty beat from the day's trek, but would let me know after they'd rested a bit and had some dinner if they thought they'd make it back out. The new arrangement was perfectly fine by me. Being the consummate night owl and having lived in this area for 5+ years, most of my excursions into the mountains tended to be nocturnal, and I'd spent many a night, some planned, some not, getting along just fine in these precarious mountains, and usually had very little anxieties in doing so. In this manner, I made my way down the ridgeline of Leavenworth to a locally known camping area, Pavilion Point, which from its high vantage point overlooked both Silver Plume and the neighboring town of Georgetown. In between the two small towns, approximately 2 to 3 miles apart, was an old railroad attraction called the Georgetown Loop. I should also mention now that at this time there was a strict fire ban in effect, and that this summer was probably the driest I'd experienced since moving to Colorado back in 2013. There were also several wildfires wreaking havoc in the state, requiring all available emergency resources. Failing to adhere to the fire ban was taken very seriously, with fines ranging in the thousands of dollars. That being said, I had not planned on having a campfire for the obvious reasons. After settling into a comfortable spot near Pavilion Point, I kicked back and started counting the fireballs. By 9 or 10 p.m., my friend let me know they wouldn't be making it back up the mountain and to enjoy the show, and that maybe he would join me the following night. Over the next hour or two, I had counted close to 100 meteors, ranging from quick zips to bright fireballs that would leave these awesome streaks that temporarily froze in the sky like thin glow sticks that slowly faded into the darkness behind. I was having a blast, and as the novelty was finally starting to wear off, I began hearing some faint noises and rustling about in the darkness of the surrounding woods. I wasn't worried much yet, and was used to hearing all kinds of strange sounds in the woods, and knew it was probably nothing more than some deer or a porcupine at worst. But after a few minutes, and as the rustling seemed to be moving closer, paranoia got a hold of me, and I decided to take some action. Typically during similar late-night adventures, I would just build a small campfire to scare away any critters and add some comforting proximity light to the area. But as previously stated, fires, no matter how well contained, were strictly prohibited. Besides the fact that I could possibly be cited and fined, I was more worried about actually causing a wildfire, which I would never be able to forgive myself if somehow responsible for destroying the surrounding woods which I had now considered home. That's when I remembered that in my backpack I had that powerful green laser. I wrestled around the pack in the dark for a few moments, and I kicked myself for not remembering I had brought it, thinking now maybe it could scare off animals. Glad to have found it in hand, I started aiming into the dark woods and bushes where I had heard noises. I felt more at ease for a moment until the laser hit the eyes of some forest creature in some nearby bushes. The eyes reflecting the laser like what you'd see driving a late-night dark highway, the deer in the headlights effect. Whatever it was, likely a fox I hoped, screeched and disappeared into the darkness. I also had with me a small dim headlamp which had remained off the entirety of the night to help keep my natural night vision. I quickly shined it around, but it was pretty much useless in illuminating anything further than a dozen or so feet. A bit startled at this point, but not wanting to head down the mountain just yet, I decided to go against reason and proceeded to build a tiny fire pit using the stones around me until I had a 1.5-foot circular pit constructed with a large flat rock to cover the top that I figured would definitely contain all burning embers and hopefully any light that might be looking to escape. I also stationed my camelback next to it to douse the flames if need be. Still probably the smallest campfire I'd ever made. The smoldering twig pile literally the size of my hand still immediately put me at ease. That feeling was unfortunately short-lived, and after a few minutes I was feeling guilty about breaking the rules and possibly putting the area in danger with my small fire. But instead of putting it out, I decided it'd be best to have a quick scout around the area to see if I could spot any signs of a possible patrolling forest ranger or nearby campers, even though in my previous 5 years hanging around here I had never seen a single soul in this area at night. Deciding it couldn't hurt, I made my way over to a scenic overlook which loomed 1,000 feet or more directly over the Georgetown Loop Railroad area, with Silver Plume dimly illuminated to the west and Georgetown to the east. I scanned the surrounding woods looking for any signs of life and saw nothing unusual. As my fears of breaking the law or of sparking a natural disaster subsided, I eased back and continued dinking around with the laser, wielding it like a lightsaber and tracing the lines of meteors that were still zipping overhead. As midnight approached, I guess I had my fill of shooting stars for one night and decided to take one last look around for fire snitches. As I went over and peered down towards the railroad near the base of the mountain, I noticed what looked like a singular light pop on, which quickly turned into two lights which to my stunned dismay appeared to be heading up in my direction. I was immediately taken aback by the sight of any lights in that area, being that the railroad was closed and didn't allow camping on the premises. The two lights appeared impossibly to be moving straight up the mountain directly towards me. The preceding incline between myself and the railroad was luckily made up of dense forest with steep jagged cliffs, and without a doubt had no roads or trails that would lead straight up the mountain. My initial thought when the lights appeared was that it must be forest rangers on ATVs or dirt bikes or something, and they somehow miraculously detected my small fire, perhaps with trail cameras, thermal optics, or night vision. I was baffled that there were two separate lights, as I had knowledge that we had only one Forest Service employee that oversaw this entire geological quadrangle, and it was highly unlikely, rather inconceivable, that they would be on any kind of watch or patrol that night, much less two of them. Regardless, I stared down in amazement for a moment, quickly calculating that even with fast dirt bikes on some unknown secret trail, I probably had the jump on them by at least 5 to 10 minutes. I turned, urgently gathering my things, and dumped the rest of my water on any remaining embers just in case the fire was what they were after, and proceeded to scurry in the opposite direction on the main trail that led me back towards Silver Plume. I figured even at a brisk walk I'd be so far out ahead of any pursuers that I needn't worry too much, and made my way without any flashlight or headlamp, as to not draw any further unwanted attention. Was there really anybody headed up the mountain to look for me anyways? It seemed completely improbable, and I was probably overreacting to the movement of some odd lights, so I was telling myself. After a couple minutes, I made it maybe 200 yards down the trail and quickly glanced back to Pavilion Point. To my complete and utter horror, I could see what looked like a couple bright flashlights darting around from left to right, frantically searching around the same area I had built my fire pit. I couldn't believe my eyes, and a deep sense of dread flooded over me. Although thoroughly confused now, I supposed that my fire must have been spotted, and I was likely in a lot of trouble. In this moment, I still believed that the lights had to be some type of forest ranger or law enforcement cracking down hard the imposed fire ban. Realizing now that if caught I would probably receive a misdemeanor citation and be fined upwards of $2,000, I began to run. As I got into full sprint, I reached over my shoulders and grabbed both rock hammer and hatchet off my pack that had started clinking together loudly. The headlamp around my neck I would click on and off for only a second at a time every dozen paces or so. Like I mentioned at the start, it was very, very dark and there were many twists and turns along this trail. With that in mind, I realized that taking the switchbacks would not be an ideal way of getting down this mountain, and so started darting down some smaller offshoot dirt trails that, though tighter and more treacherous, would ultimately get me down faster. As I turned and jetted down one of these more concealed byways, I could see one of these lights, which had a hint of purplish fluorescent hue and looked kind of like a motorcycle headlight, was headed right down the main trail in my direction. I could also see that the second light had picked a different trajectory towards me from Pavilion Point, making a beeline that, to my bewilderment, shot it up over the tree-line straight in my direction. At this moment my mind felt like it had exploded. There was now no possible explanation for the situation I now found myself. Things were not adding up in any logical way, not even close. First, the improbability that my fire could have been traced or seen, nearly zero. Second, 2 rangers or law enforcement in the area willing to give pursuit, also nearly zero. Third, the fact that those lights could traverse that dense and steep mountain face within mere minutes, for sure impossible. And now, one of the lights had taken flight, literally defying gravity in front of my eyes as it effortlessly glided over the thick wooded pines that covered the entire area. Mind blown. All of a sudden, this was no longer about getting a ticket, or be fined, or receiving a stern scolding about forest safety and whatnot. No, this was. I didn't have time to think about it. My legs never stopped moving as I squinted my eyes trying to see my way down this godforsaken mountain. I clicked the headlamp on off, never slowing down, on off, another dozen paces, on off. And that's when I felt it, within a split second, all of a sudden I'm completely weightless. Silence. What's happening? Did I die? Had I been shot or something? I didn't hear any gunshots. And then, crack, smash, BAM, as my legs hit hardwood and broke through thick tree branches. I relaxed my hands and the hatchet and rock hammer were gone. Sharp pain and I immediately thought my legs were broken. I was spinning, no tumbling. One last crash. As I landed on my back against what felt like solid rock. Another lightning bolt of pain. This time my tailbone as my back end flattened against the rock pile. I felt broken. My legs felt broken. I didn't know what had just happened. Blinding pain now all over my body, and as I lay my head back for a second to get my bearings, I see overhead behind me up about 20 to 30 feet, on what must have been the trail I was just on, zoomed that purplish white light as it continued down the small dirt trail towards town. A half second later, out in front of me and slightly downhill, zoomed the second light, now below the tree line on the adjacent main trail running parallel, the one that had disappeared beneath my feet. I lay for a second wondering if I was dead, then wondering how many bones I had broken, and feeling around my body for a moment with bloodied wet hands, slowly realized that I had just ran straight off a cliff face, hit a huge pine on the way down that flipped me into a cartwheel twice before smashing ass first onto a slightly exposed rock pile. Damn it, and I was almost there, having made it about 3/4 the way down the mountain. I tried to move, but pain made me almost cry out in agony. I slid myself slightly to the right off of some of the bigger boulders I had landed on onto a softer spot of ground. Before I could even think for a second, I saw both lights headed back down the main trail that was located about 30 feet in front of me. I gasped, then held my breath as the lights approached, hearing what sounded like faint garbled walkie-talkie radio chatter. I quickly reached into my pocket and switched my phone off so it wouldn't make a sound or ping my location. And as the lights got closer and passed in front of me, I could finally see what the hell it was that had had me in pursuit for the last 10 minutes. Side note, the typical hike down from Pavilion Point into Silver Plume took at least 30 to 40 minutes, and I had almost made it down with probably a quarter mile or so before I would have stepped back into the lights of civilization. But no, now I'm stuck on an angled rocky slope, bleeding all over, not sure the extent of my injuries. As I stare out in front of me, at the returning chasers, I can see humanoid figures riding on what looks like futuristic motorcycles, kind of. But where are the wheels? Why is their movement so smooth and steady? Also, why aren't these machines making any noise? Motorcycles and dirt bikes are loud, annoyingly loud, but these seem to make no sound. Am I deaf? Did I lose my hearing in the crash? No, wait, did I lose my fucking mind in the smash-up? What the fuck is going on? At this moment, I'm not sure if I'm even still alive. Are these postmodern demons hovering around to take me on to the next place? I can't make any sense of it. I can't believe what I'm seeing. No, not demons. I got it. Aliens. That's gotta be it. Maybe. Anyways, the hoverbikes, which I'll now refer to them as, passed me by, seemingly unawares of my banged-up presence. It seemed as though their riders had at least abandoned their vehement searching for me. They moved slow and gracefully now, gliding so seamless and smooth versus the frantic and accelerated pace of our prior melee. I squinted in the darkness to try and make out these riders, blurry vision. They appeared to be wearing what looked like all white or grayish attire, head to toe. I hear more faint radio garble but can't make out the sounds. Is it English? Foreign? Is it even a language? I don't know. I exhale my held breath, which I'd been holding for God knows how long. Breathe, just breathe. Try and calm down for a second. A few moments pass, I think. I don't know how long as I just lay there trying to breathe. In and out, in and out. What the fuck just happened? What the fuck are those things? Who are those people? Before I have any longer to ponder the matter, I see in the trees more hovering dim lights coming back my way. Oh Jesus. A few seconds later I see those two hoverbikes, now without any headlights on, hovering through the forest on the trail below me. A little further away I see two more, then three more, further in the distance. Most of the hoverbikes passed quietly and just kept going westward, disappearing through the woods. I'm not sure how many I counted, maybe 10, maybe 12. I felt like my mind was completely broken. This can't be happening. Then just off the trail in front of me, two of the bikes stop and the riders jump off. I can see the dim shape of their outlines against the dark forest. It appears to me now that they're wearing what looks like chemical hazmat suits. Like something out of the movie Outbreak or Arrival. Big full round-faced Tyvek suits or something. They don't have any flashlights or anything, and it doesn't appear like they're still looking for me at all. They stand next to their hoverbikes as the crafts start moving very slowly, their occupants walking alongside. Across the side of the bikes I can see very dim lights slowly flashing across from one end to the other, going from reddish to orangish to yellowish. Very dim, soft lights. Lights moving from left to right. The bikes hover for a moment and stop. The riders now grab what appears to be staffs of some sort, some kind of tool from the opposite side of their bikes. They both take a few steps from the hoverbikes, bend over and start stabbing at the ground. No, wait, they're digging. It looks like they're digging. I keep watching, squinting my eyes, trying not to breathe. Too afraid to make a sound, staying completely still even though my body, especially my ass bone, is screaming in pain, but I won't move, not even a muscle. After digging for a few seconds, the beings return to the bikes. What looks to be small round compartments running alongside the bikes, think saddlebags but flush and internal, open up and the contents of their shovels are whisked inside these compartments. I'm fucking stunned at this point. Totally overwhelmed and engulfed in fear, agony, dread, you name it. I don't know what I'm even looking at. Are these people? Like human people? Are they aliens? Are they scientists? I can't tell with those weird suits they've got on. I watch them work, repeating the cycle. Take samples, insert samples into craft, move along a few feet, take samples, etc. These hoverbikes can even 0-point turn, spinning around 180 degrees from time to time. I hear no noise during all this, no talking, nothing, not even forest sounds. At this point, I'm beginning to think I've had some sort of psychotic episode with involuntary hallucinations, fear and paranoia. Maybe this is a dream? It doesn't feel like a dream. It doesn't feel like hallucinations either, at least not from any drug I've tried. Those types of hallucinations have definable characteristics, silver linings, waves, melting, and can be shook off with ease most times. What's happening right now is none of those things. Maybe this is something new? My mind starts reeling. Am I crazy? Am I not crazy? Is this real? What is real? What the fuck is happening? I can't make any sense of it, any of it. I sit and watch these things, these beings, these people, or whatever, with their bikes, or hovercrafts, or ships, or who the fuck knows for quite some time. This is torture. Who are they? Where did they come from? Why were they chasing me? Did I stumble upon something I shouldn't have? How did they figure out where I was? The laser. Maybe if it's aliens, they saw the laser. I don't know. Maybe if it's people, they saw the laser. Now the fire seems to have had nothing to do with all this. Or did it? Madness. This is madness. I've gone mad. This can't be. Everything was just fine before all this. I didn't take any weird drugs today. I don't think, at least not of my free will. How did it go from innocent meteor shower to all this? Are these military personnel? I've heard of other weird conspiracies involving the government doing shady things in these mountains. Is this that? Am I sitting on a top-secret research facility? Why are they digging? Why are they taking stuff? Are they testing for something? And why the fuck are they wearing those suits? Is this place contaminated, radioactive? Should I be wearing a suit? Should I be drinking the local water? What the fuck is going on here? This can't be real. It's not real. Yeah, this isn't really happening. No, this isn't really happening. I know, this isn't really happening. Just stand up and walk home. It's all a figment of your imagination, a mind mess-up, a glitch. You've hit your head, or depleted your oxygen, or fuck, who knows, but it's all in your head, yeah. This isn't really happening. Just stand the fuck up and walk home. Just stand up now, just move. But I can't. This is happening. I know it's happening. I can feel that it's happening. It's really happening. No, just stand up. They aren't real. They aren't even there. You're crazy. They can't even see you. They won't see you. They're not real. All these thoughts plus a million others racing through my brain. It all seems so clear though. Clarity, yes. As I ponder my predicament, I stare up to the sky. Why? Why is this happening to me? And as I look, I see a drone pass over. An honest-to-goodness recognizable drone, like made by humans. I think I can even hear it. It has lights that blink red, green, red, green. It passes overhead and out of view. Maybe I'm not crazy. I recognized a drone. If I was crazy, things would be getting crazier, right? More outlandish and out of control, but that's a drone. It's real. It's grounding, not literally, but it feels grounding. It feels real. I'll even see a few more as the minutes turn to hours. I wonder what they're doing. Why these people or things are combing the forest, taking samples. For what? What's going on? As the hours pass as I witness their workings, I still feel crazy. I keep trying to convince myself that this is all a hallucination and that I can just go home whenever I want. Just stand up, walk through these people, these hover bikes, and drones. Just walk by, wave, and say goodnight. It's simple, this isn't real. So, if it's not real, then I can just go home. But if this isn't real, then where home would I be walking? Is home real? Fuck. So, I sit still, focus on my breathing. Slowly in, slowly out, slowly in, slowly out. As crazy as I feel, there's a part of me that knows this is actually happening. And that I can't just stand up, cause then they'll catch me. Why did they chase me in the first place? This doesn't seem to be about fire. What would they have done if they had caught me? Scare me? Beat me? Kill me? I mean, I was literally seconds away from being nabbed. They had closed in on me. The speed they were traveling. The trajectory. The other bike strategically poised to cut me off. All literally seconds away. Then I ran off that cliff edge. Total freak-out accident. Couldn't have planned it if I wanted to. Total and utter confusion for one quiet second until I hit that tree, and with that the pain of reality setting back in hard. Would they have run me down with those hover bikes? Would they have shot me? Do they even have weapons? I don't see any weapons, but it is dark and blurry, and I don't know what even looking at now. Confusion stacked on confusion stacked, all these thoughts plus a million more. So, I just lay there and watch. Watch them work, or what appears to be work. I wondered if the hover bikes were sensing things in the ground, and that's why the workers choose to dig where they did. I wondered if it has sensors at all. If so, why isn't it censoring me, my presence? And these drones flying overhead? I mean, I know that cops have had helicopters and drones equipped with FLIR and other sensitive devices that can detect like bank robbers hiding in thick bushes. They've had that shit for decades. So why are these obviously superior vehicles not sensing me laying here? Why have I not been caught? If it was so important to chase me from the top of a mountain, why did they eventually give up so easily? Why can't they see me now? At one point during all this, one of the suits got within 15 to 20 feet of me before moving on. Didn't they see me? I thought for a few minutes that one of these people were actually staring right at me. Hard to tell with a devoid masked chemical suit, but still. It looked like it was looking right at me for what felt like forever. Then they just moved on, digging, grabbing leaves off trees, etc. What the fuck is going on? All these thoughts plus a million more. I focus on my breathing and slash out and slash out. At one point I remember coming up with some mantra, saying it over and over and over and over. In that moment I thought that I would never be able to have another thought outside of that mantra. Funny that now, I can't even recall what exactly I was saying to myself, over and over and over. I just needed to get through it. If this is real, I told myself, then time, as I understand time, must be real. And time meant that at some point the sun must rise. If this is real, then the sun must rise. I suppose then that I can afford to waste a little more time and a little more sanity to see if this is actually truly reality, because if this is actually real, then the sun must eventually rise. So, I waited, watched, chanted, breathed, until finally, much to my surprise, I could see the sky shade changing, just a little lighter than the darkness, just a crack of dark blue, then finally blue, then finally the stars started to disappear. Was this all really real? And with the hint of dawn, I heard sound coming from the whoever whatevers, a quick chattering sound garble. And then I saw them hovering by one, just as they had come. Going east towards Georgetown. Hovering along the trails, below the tree-line. I tried to count as they went by, hoping to note when the last one was finally gone, quickly realizing I didn't really know how many had come. And so I sat, still perfectly still. And the dawn rose. And still I sat. I had made it this long. I could make it a few minutes longer. To be snagged at this point, caught, would be unforgivable, no matter how painful. And so, the dawn came and went, and the sun rose, and when the sun rose, so did I. When I finally stood up on rubbery limbs, I could barely keep my balance. I looked down to see both legs of my pants were completely stained in blood below my knees. I didn't care. I felt around to my tailbone, which now had a golf ball-sized knot that ached with such ferocity. I didn't care. As I looked around, I could finally see what had transpired just hours previous. I found my tossed rock hammer and hatchet close by, laughing on the thought that if I'd held onto them, shit. Finally, I climbed back up to the shortcut deer trail that I had run off of, saw the tree that I clipped, missing huge broken branches at knee level. I looked around the area where I had landed at large, sharp, protruding boulders and other broken branches with points that would have impaled me if I hadn't landed on the rocks exactly where I did. Holy shit, I should be dead. I gathered my things and started limping home with mind still confused and reeling, but alive no doubt. I never felt better to be climbing the stairs to my apartment. Beeline straight for my bed, about to pass out from exhaustion when I realized I had an appointment in 2.5 hours to get my hair cut. Well, at least I can power nap an hour before trying to explain to my hair lady why I can't even sit in her chair. Oh well. And that's just the beginning of a story that would unfold over the next couple of days here in the Colorado Rockies surrounding Silver Plume.